video, we're going to look at how to import World of Warcraft terrain and 3D models right into Unity. And the reason why, well, you can make machinimas, you can make fan-based video games, you could do all kinds of stuff. It's up to you what you want to do after you've imported it. I'm just going to show you the tools on how to get it done. Now, a lot of people in the machinima community have used Blender, which is great. Another option, of course, is Motionbuilder, which is what is used in the more professional world. For example, The Mandalorian 2 was done by this company, and they're using Motionbuilder. But some of the reasons to use Unity, I'm going to leave links to in the description or right here. But Cinemachine makes a great tool for making film and video. And there's a lot of special tools in Unity now for making videos. There's a cutting-edge technology called real-time filmmaking, where film editors can actually film in essentially 3D in real time, which is there's more. You can read more about that here. And Unity works closely with Maya and Motionbuilder and Max, which is a nice feature if you prefer the Autodesk suite to Blender. I can also animate the characters in Unity directly with the uMotion asset, which means I don't have to go use Motionbuilder. I can animate my characters right here inside of Unity. I also get lip sync for my machinimas, so my characters in the WoW world here move their lips as per the audio file, and that's done automatically with this package. And I can also make my own terrains using the Unity terrain tools over here, and do cool stuff like erosion and all these different terrain functions. Because I'm using Unity's terrain tools, I can also make my own buildings and 3D models using Unity's Pro Builder. So, and somebody said to me, well, if Unity was so great, you wouldn't have to use any of these assets. You would just Unity would have everything built into one. Well, that's exactly what they've done here. Pro Builder used to be an asset, and it's such a great tool that Unity hired the entire team, and they've made it an exclusive feature of Unity. So Pro Builder lets you build your own sculptures, 3D models, houses, all kinds of stuff. So just a few of the advantages to using Unity for something such as a machinima. There's all kinds of tools where you could end up making a pretty cool film right here inside of Unity without having to rely on other tools such as Motionbuilder or Blender or any of that. Alright, let's get going on the tutorial part. Okay, well, before I get too distracted on another topic here, let's talk about importing World of Warcraft models and terrain into Unity. You got to download the exe file or build it yourself on my GitHub page. There's a link to that in the description, and here is the build that is done with Visual Studio Code. If you want to open up that project, and to build it you need to open up the file adt-exporter.js. I've actually put the command line for the build right here, so you would just have to come down here to the terminal and say node build.js win64. That will make the exe file. Now, since you don't want to go through the process of building, I've linked to the zip file. Now, the zip file contains the win64 folder, which has the exe. You're going to need to have the modified WoW exporter in order to do this. Now, you will have to open up your World of Warcraft installation, and there's Retail and Classic. Either one will work. They've both been tested. For my projects, I'm using World of Warcraft Classic, and for a lot of other projects and for some of the newer 3D models and that type of stuff, you'll need to, of course, get into the retail part here. Now, I'm going to be using one of the garrisons, and we got the Alliance Garrison 3. I think this is a good example for this video, and make sure that you select Splatmaps. Now, for some reason Splatmaps isn't showing up. It should be called -2, and it would be at the very top selection on the list here, but just select Splatmaps, and then you have to shift click to select which chunks you want to export. Now, this garrison only has one chunk, so that makes it easy to work with. Now, we're not ready to export yet. We would first have to set the export directory to our Unity project folder. So I'm going to open up Unity Hub, and we'll need to make a new project. I'm going to use the most recent version that I have installed, 2020.20b5, and just call it WoW import test. Of course, we want 3D, and I have it set to my location, and my Unity project is running. Now the next step is going to be import the Unity package that's linked below. This Unity package is WoW importer v001, and I'm going to open that up, and it comes with some double-sided shaders, material that's used on the terrain, one example scene, some scripts. Some of these you probably don't need, but they're good examples. Randomized height shows you how to make how to modify terrains through script. Some extra shaders here. These should probably be consolidated into a single folder. We have the exports directory. We're going to be working a lot in there. Here's the eye invisible mat, which is if you just bring in WoW characters and you want to make their eyelids invisible. JSON.net is necessary because this when we export from here, it's going to export JSON data. We're going to import that with JSON.net. We have post-processing profile here for the main camera. The materials folder, we need to have that, and we also need to have the terrain folder. This is where terrains are created into, and the terrain are broken down into 3 different parts: the terrain data, the terrain layers, and the terrain palette presets. But we need to import everything, and just hit import. Okay, you're gonna have some errors most likely, and go to Window, Package Manager, and we need to get the Terrain Toolbox Utilities. There is an option right here, and go to Advanced Project Settings, and say Enable Preview Packages, and click I understand. We can go ahead and close this window now, and we want to click this over to Unity Registry, and probably do a refresh list. Now in the Unity registry there should be the terrain tools, and it's version 302, preview 2. This 302 version is newer than what I have in my main project. So it's going to ask us to update, and it's going to import the terrain pack. Now that we have the terrain tools installed, there are a few errors left over, and they're in this script of mine called Terrain Toolbox Utilities WoW. This is a script that I duplicated from the Terrain Toolbox Utility script, which is located at Packages, Terrain Tools, Editor, and Terrain Toolbox. In the Terrain Toolbox folder, there is Terrain Toolbox Utilities. I made a copy of this script and made a few changes to it. This is the script that is giving us some errors. Terrain Toolbox Utilities WoW, and it's located at scripts, Terrain Toolbox Utilities WoW. And there's been some updates to the Terrain Toolbox Utilities, and that's where these errors are coming in. I'm not sure about them, but I can tell you one thing. This show export height map GUI is never called, so it's not needed in the script. So go ahead and just delete that whole thing. And then I'm going to redo that one time. I'm selecting the void show export height map GUI. that entire function, and we're just going to delete from here to here. Don't need it. That's going to give us a couple more errors. One of them is right here. Just comment this out. We're never exporting a height map. In fact, we never import a height map. So this is all of this code. There's an error here and an error here, so I'm just going to comment out the entire switch right there, and that should get rid of the errors. Alright, so going back to Unity, that should clear up all of the errors. And I could have cleaned that up a little bit better, but the reality is a lot of times people will run into errors like this, and it's better just to show an example of what may happen. So all the errors are cleared up. Let's go ahead and go to the scene called SMV Alliance Garrison. There are a few things in here, missing scripts and whatnot from the main camera. You could just remove those. Import ADT world is not needed, so we just have a regular old camera. And there's a virtual camera. Again, this is for Cinemachine. I'm going to delete that, and we're going to see the same thing on the player. Go ahead and clean that stuff up. We don't need those missing scripts, and in fact we probably don't need the player at all, to be honest. Nor the canvas. These are things that you could just delete. They're from my project. So we're getting right down to where we have terrain creator and this ADT. Now the ADT of course isn't imported correctly. Just go ahead and delete this entire game object. So we're left with main camera, the directional light, and event system, and terrain creator. The terrain creator game object is what imports the WoW world. So first we have to export. Now we need to point it to this folder. It's the exports folder, so I'm just going to click show and explore. And that's going to bring it over here where I could go right to the assets folder. I'm copying this location, and when I go to WoW export, there's an export directory, and I'm going to paste the assets folder, press enter. And the way you need to do this is make sure that you click on the exports folder. So I'm showing the assets folder. I have selected the exports folder. It's highlighted, and I clicked select folder. You can't click on this to verify that you have it right, but just make sure that you followed that process exactly, and that it's pointing to this exports folder. Again, you have to select it like that and click select folder and hit apply. Now I'm going to go ahead and figure out how to get out of this screen. There we go, and click shift on here. If we've set the export directory to our WoW project assets exports folder, and we have a tile selected, it's set to Splatmaps, we're ready to select export one tile. And it could take a minute or two, so while this button is grayed out, just wait around, and eventually it should finish. And there we go, successfully exported the map. So I'm going to keep this open but minimize it. When we go back to Unity, it's going to start with this busy icon as we see on the screen, and it's importing all of the files that have been put into this folder right here. Now that the import's finished, you can see there's a whole bunch of new directories, dungeons, items, maps, and it's imported textures and models and all kinds of good stuff. What you need to find is the maps directory. It's created a folder here, but it's created a file called exportdata.json. So we have SM Alliance Garrison Level 2 export data. So if we go to Train Creator game object, there is a script here called Splatmap importer. It also has a script on it called import ADT world, and it has an export data JSON file. I'm going to delete this, and it will say none text asset. What you just need to do is drag the JSON file into here. The JSON file you're dragging in is the maps folder, and it has an underscore export data from whichever zone you exported. Now once you've done that, go ahead and click parse export data, and immediately we have an error. This error, if we dig into it, is saying that it can't find a couple of files. Now, this doesn't happen all the time, but it may happen, so I'm glad it did. What it's doing is it's looking for some files in here. There's supposed to be 3 files, and there's only one. There's the model placement information file. So we're going to go back to WoW export, and we're just going to re-export this tile one more time. Okay, successfully exported, and if we go back, we'll see that now the 3 files are there. Again, this rarely happens. I've exported 30 chunks at once, and on one of the chunks it was missing these 2 files. So every now and then it happens, and if you're having an error importing, make sure that under your maps and your chunk folder, each one of the ADTs, for example 3128 here, has all 3 files: the model placement information, the material data, and the height data. Now the material data and height data are used to create the terrain. So we want to rerun this process. First I'm going to go to the console, clear that error out, and now I'm going to delete this ADT because the ADT is created every time you click parse export data. And this time we could see that it was actually able to parse it, and we have something here. And we're not done yet. There's an error. We could say a file is not found. Now this might not happen on your version of World of Warcraft. If you update battle.net, that this problem may be solved. So you might not have this problem, but once again I'm glad it did happen, so I can show an example of some of the errors you might run into when trying to import the scene. Now it's saying it cannot find the file vfwfirefly01.mtl. So I'm going to select this, and that will let me actually select this location. And I copied that, so now I can just paste that right here. And I can see it has the Fireflies OBJ, which is the model file, but it doesn't have the MTL file, which is the material file. And if I go back one directory, you'll see that if I go to the bugs folder, it has the bugs PNG file, it has the OBJ, which is the mesh, and it also has the MTL file. So one way to fix this is just copy another MTL file and use that instead. The one it's looking for is called vfwfireflies01.mtl, the same name as this OBJ file. So I'm just going to copy the file name and paste it into this one. So now I have the file that is missing, this vfwfireflies01.mtl. And we'll want to edit that because it's not quite correct. How we figure out this part is a little bit more tricky. We'll need to figure out what texture it was unable to find. So I'm just going to select this Fireflies, and we need to open up the log for WoW export, which is located at %appdata, which gets you to your appdata/roaming. We want to get to appdata/local, and here is the WoW export folder, user data, and default. Underneath the default, we have runtime.log. This is the log from our last time we clicked this export button. So if I do a search in here for this file name, I could find out what happened. Valley of the Four Winds Fireflies.m2, it found the model, and then it says error exporting M2 model, as OBJ. So here we have the Firefly 01 OBJ model, and then loading cask file 166232, which is generic glow 64. Failed to export texture. Requested data file is empty or missing. Now again, this is probably not the case if you have an updated version of WoW and you've updated through battle.net. This problem should be fixed, but you might run into something like this, so I'm going to show how to resolve it. It was unable to find the texture, and the texture number is 166232. We can see here the name of it is genericglow64.blp. So I'm just going to copy the texture number, which is 166232. Go to the WoW Export Tools website and go to the Files section. And up here in the files, we'll search for that number, 166232. That will show us the FDID here, and the only one, the exact match is spells/genericglow64.blp. So we know that the problem that was experienced over here in Unity, and it was that there was no material file, and we know that the material file for this Fireflies is supposed to be pointing to 166232, which is spell/genericglow64.blp. So I'm just going to go genericglow64.blp and go over here to WoW Export and go to the Textures tab, and we'll type that in and find these spells genericglow64. Unable to preview it. Again, it's probably because of this problem, and we probably want transparency on that one, and I'm going to say export PNG. Unable to export texture. And we can check in Unity to see if it's there. We'll go under exports, spells, and there would be a generic glow, and it's not here. So we could download this file from the WoW Export Tools website, or it looks like with this one we can actually import it from another place. There's World Goober Generic Glow 64, and that one was successful. It's the same exact icon, so no problem there. And when you export it, it does let you view it. So I'm going to say View and Explore. There's the Generic Glow 64, where we can go to Assets, Exports, Spells, and place it where it needs to be, genericglow64.png. So now the Fireflies texture is there, and if we go to the Fireflies folder, the material file is there, and we need to edit it. It needs a material file, and the number again is 166232. So we're going to copy that and come over here to the material file and paste it in. It has an illumination value of 1, which is normal for everything. And then this map _KD is the path to the file. Now this is going to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 directories. And in this case we are in the Fireflies directory, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it's going to be /spells. And the name of that one was genericglow64.png. This is a second material, which was for that other bugs model, so we're just going to delete that. A typical MTL file that uses one texture looks like this. It just has a reference to the material ID, and it has a map to the texture. So you can see it's pretty simple to create your own MTL files if they go missing. And now we've created the MTL file for the Fireflies. Let's go back into Unity and try to import this one more time. It says it couldn't find the Fireflies _01.mtl. And now at that location there's the Fireflies 01.mtl file, which points to the correct texture. And we're going to delete the ADT completely and re-import it. And this time we have another error, and it is the fireflies01.mtl again. This time it says 6sm underscore fireflies01mtl at the Shadowmoon doodads. So that location is expansion 05. Shadowmoon doodads. Oh, Shadowmoon doodads. And there's one in here called 6sm fireflies. It's looking for 01.mtl. Now there is a fireflies obj, and there is no MTL. So one thing I could do is come back to WoW Export and go to Models and type in FireFL. And there's a couple different kinds. There's the FLY and the FLIES. And the ones I'm interested in are in these expansion 04 and expansion 05. So if you're missing files, sometimes you can just come in here, select everything, do a basic search, just say, hey, I don't want to have an error, so I'm just going to select all this stuff and bring it in, and just say export as OBJ. That's going to move it over to the Unity folder. And let's check that doodads folder, and we're going to see that it has Firefly Glow and a Firefly 02 and a Fireflies 01 and a 6sm at Fireflies 01.mtl. But the error that I got when I was trying to import was a 6sm Fireflies underscore 01.mtl, and somewhere along the lines, probably somebody at Blizzard forgot an underscore right there. So I'm not going to delete this one because maybe it's referenced in that way, but now I have one, an MTL file that matches what it's looking for. This is an unfortunate process, but it's a reality of working with this data. Now we're going to have one more error because it wants the Fireflies underscore 01, but not with the FLIES, it's the FLYS. So if I get my file name to match correctly, yeah, I'm going to delete the ADT one more time and do a parse import. And this time you can see it's super busy, so it looks like it's got past the initial problems we had with the Fireflies. And the import's finished. Now before I go look at anything, we can see that the trees don't look quite right. Their shader is standard, and I've included in here a shader. It's in the double-sided shader folder. Not sure what that is. Doesn't matter. Let's clear it out. So select any tree on the shader drop down, type in underscore, and that'll get the standard double-sided. Under there, change it to cutout, and all the trees with that material are fixed. We'll see there's some of these kind of light ray things coming in. You'll have to decide what shader you want on all this. There's no script that can really decide what every 3D model needs as far as a shader goes. But for a light ray coming down like this, we probably want a particle, surface standard, and rendering it as additive. And it looks a little bright. We might want to adjust either the metallic or the smoothness factor on that, but that's probably good enough for now. And we can see it has definitely imported the entire world. And we have a terrain on the ground with properly tiling textures. And that means that if we ever decide to use the terrain tools, and we'll need to select a tool. There's a lot of tools here, sculpt and erosion and effects, and I'm just going to go to razor lower terrain and bring the brush size down a bit, and we can raise terrain up or lower it down. I'm going to control Z on that, you could also select to paint on the terrain. Paint texture. And now we'll have to select the layers. And you can see this is automatically imported to where it knows all of the textures that it's using from WoW. So if we decide to use, maybe this is the path texture, and we can draw our own path on, bring the strength down a little bit, and kind of draw, we can draw our own path and fully edit the terrain right here in Unity. So that's one big advantage of working in Unity here, is we have a very quickly rendering terrain that's not broken down into hundreds or thousands of chunks, and it's fully editable as inside of Unity as far as terrain height and erosion and even the textures that are used on the terrain. So, but we can see everything is imported here. Anything we run into that has a black texture needs to get a double-sided texture, or a double-sided shader rather, and set to cutout. And that's gonna fix, it doesn't take very long, it takes just a couple minutes. Some of this could be done through script and try to identify which 3D models are plants, but for the time being it's not that hard just to set the plants in your scene to the fade to a double-sided transparent cutout shader. So we want to do standard double-sided cutout, and already most all the plants in the scene are fixed. And there's some things left over to work on, like the glow from the lamps. Again, it's up to you to decide what's best here. Either probably a sprite or a particle. I'm going to do an additive sprite for that one, and you can see that worked out. Everything in here is looking pretty good. Again, the smoke, probably this one is probably going to get deleted and replaced with some Unity particle effect, but we could try to use it either with a particle shader or this cutout. And with the cutout shader, we'll adjust that alpha cutoff to get it right where it looks the best without any black showing. And we've got some glowing up here. This one is probably going to go for that particle standard surface shader and set that to additive. And without going too much further, this is pretty much done. We've got a glow effect here on the lamp, and it doesn't look like it's placed quite right, so I'm going to try to move it this way. I think it should be right in the middle of the lamp. And what this should be is a sprite that's always facing the camera, or perhaps we can get a similar effect using a particle surface shader that once again is set to additive. So we get a nice little glow coming off of that. And this chunk is more or less imported successfully. You could try to do a little bit more, but this is very, very well done. One plant that looks a little funny. And that's about it. This scene is ready to go. We're ready to make a machinima in here, or we are ready to make a small video game with something like Adventure Creator. So I hope this has helped you. Check the links in the description and put a like if it's helped you out. Put a comment, let me know what you might be using it for, machinima or making a video game. And I'm working on some projects myself with this, so I'll keep it posted here on the channel, and see you guys soon.